Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat in her assigned seat and watched the council debate about trade routes for the 4th hour. The Galactic Harmony Council chamber stretched out before her like a massive bowl. 47 different species had representatives here, and most of them had more important seats than humanity did. The humans sat in the back rows, along with 6 other junior species. Elena could see the important members up front, the Vrex with their purple skin and 4 arms, the crystalline Zeth, who sparkled when they spoke, and the massive Corvin, who needed special chairs to hold their weight. These were the founding members, the ones who made the real decisions. Elena had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years now. She had watched thousands of these meetings. The council always talked about harmony and cooperation, but Elena knew how things really worked. The big species decided everything in private meetings. The smaller species, like humans, just voted the way they were. Told, the mining rights for the Buray Kepler 442 system will be distributed according to current protocols, announced Councilor Thrak 9 of the Vrex Federation. His forearms moved as he spoke, a sign that Vrex considered this topic important. Each species will receive allocations based on their council contribution ratings. Elena knew what that meant. Humans would get the smallest share, just like always. The council had contribution ratings that supposedly measured how much each species helped the galaxy. But the ratings never seemed fair to Elena. Humans worked harder than most species, but they always scored low on things like technological advancement and cultural influence. The truth was that humans were not allowed to advance too much. The council had rules about everything. Humans could not research certain technologies. They could not expand to more than 50 star systems. They could not build warships bigger than destroyers. The council said these rules kept the galaxy peaceful. Elena remembered when humanity first joined the council 150 years ago. Earth had just discovered faster than light travel, but barely. Human ships were slow and clumsy compared to what other species used. The council offered to share better technology and medicine that could save millions of human lives. The price was simple: follow council rules and accept council guidance. Earth's leaders had no choice. Humans were dying from diseases that council medicine could cure easily. Human ships would take decades to reach the nearest stars. Without better engines, so humanity joined as a junior member and promised to follow all the rules. Now, Elena sat through another meeting where other species talked about humans like they were children. Counselor Zeth Prime, a tall crystal being who spoke in musical tones, was discussing work assignments for the next year. The human colonies have shown adequate performance in mining operations, Zeth Prime said. The way he said adequate made Elena's hands tighten into fists under her desk. We recommend continuing their current assignments. Perhaps some additional technical training would be beneficial. Adequate. Elena had seen the reports. Human miners worked longer hours and had fewer accidents than most other species. Human engineers solved problems that left other species confused. But it was always described as adequate or satisfactory when humans did good work. When the Corvin built something impressive, the council praised their engineering genius. When the Zeth made scientific discoveries, they called it groundbreaking research. When humans did the same work or better, they got a polite nod and suggestions for improvement. Elena's wrist device buzzed softly. A message from Earth appeared on her private screen. New mining efficiency reports ready for your review. Please confirm receipt. She typed back quickly. Received. Continue current operations. The message was code. Elena's real job was not just to sit in council meetings and vote when told. She also collected information. For the past 50 years, every human ambassador had been gathering data about council technologies, political structures, and military capabilities. Back on Earth, Thousands of researchers studied everything the council shared and everything they tried to hide. Humans were good at watching and learning. They had to be. The council gave them access to advanced technology, but always with restrictions. Human scientists could use council computers, but only for approved research. Human engineers could maintain council equipment, but they were not allowed to fully understand how it worked. But humans were patient. They learned anyway. Elena had a small memory device hidden in her wedding ring. Every day, she recorded council discussions, technical specifications, and political conversations. The device was built with modified council technology that the council itself had given to humans for communication purposes. They never suspected that human engineers had quietly improved their own. The debate about mining rights continued. Elena listened as Councillor Vraktor argued that his people deserved more resources because of their superior cultural achievements. The Zelix representative complained that her species was not getting enough support for their essential research projects. Elena said nothing. Humans had learned that speaking up in these meetings was useless. When human ambassadors tried to argue for better treatment, the council always had the same response. Junior species must demonstrate greater maturity before receiving expanded privileges. It was impossible to win. Humans could not prove they deserved better treatment because the council would not give them chances to prove themselves. They could not get better chances because they had not proven themselves. The circle never ended. The meeting finally finished after 6 hours of discussion. Elena gathered her things and prepared to leave. As she walked toward the exit, Councillor Zeth Prime approached her. Ambassador Vasquez, I trust humanity is satisfied with their current arrangements, he asked. His crystalline face did not show emotions the way human faces did, but Elena had learned to read the subtle color changes that indicated Zeth feelings. Right now, his face showed confident superiority. Humanity appreciates the Council's guidance, Elena replied with a polite smile. It was the same response she always gave. Excellent. The Vrex Federation has some additional mining opportunities that might interest your people. Nothing too challenging, of course. We would not want to overwhelm human capabilities. Elena's smile never changed. I will inform Earth of the Council's generous offer. Zeth Prime made a sound that might have been laughter. Your species has such charming humility. Very refreshing after dealing with more aggressive members. Elena nodded and walked away. Behind her smile, she was counting. 50 years of data collection. 50 years of being called humble and adequate and charming. 50 years of watching other species take credit for human work. But humans were patient. And humans were learning. Elena touched her wedding ring and thought about the latest reports from Earth. The reports that council members never saw. Soon, the council would understand exactly how much humans had learned. Very soon. 3 months later, Elena sat in the same council chamber and watched the same species argue about the same topics. But something had changed, even if the other ambassadors did not notice yet. The change had started small. Human mining colonies began reporting equipment problems more often. Productivity dropped by 5%, then 10%. When council inspectors arrived to investigate, they found human workers following all the rules perfectly. The equipment was maintained correctly. The safety protocols were followed exactly. But somehow, the work moved slower. Our drilling machines need more frequent maintenance than expected, explained Chief Engineer Sarah Chun to a team of Vrex inspectors. We are being very careful to avoid accidents. The Vrex inspectors could not argue with safety concerns. The council had strict rules about worker protection. If humans wanted to be extra careful, that was their choice. The inspectors left with reports that praised human dedication to safety standards. But Elena knew the truth. The equipment problems were not accidents. Human engineers had quietly modified their machines to require more maintenance. They had adjusted work schedules to include more safety breaks. Every change was legal and followed council rules perfectly. But the combined effect was that humans were producing less and less. Meanwhile, human workers throughout the galaxy were becoming harder to find. When other species needed technical help, humans were suddenly too busy with their own projects. When the council needed volunteers for special assignments, humans politely declined and suggested other species might be better qualified. Elena noticed these changes because she received coded reports from human colonies every day. But the other council members had not realized anything was wrong. To them, humans were just being their usual quiet, humble selves. The first sign of real trouble came during a council meeting about space station maintenance. Councilor Breckval, a short blue-skinned Zealix, was complaining about delays in the outer rim stations. The maintenance schedules are falling behind, Breckval announced. Several important systems need attention, but work crews are not available. Elena knew why the work crews were not available. Human technicians had quietly resigned from their positions on outer rim stations over the past 2 months. They gave various reasons: family obligations, health concerns, career changes. Each resignation seemed normal by itself, but together, they meant that dozens of space stations were now running with minimal maintenance staff. Perhaps other species could provide additional technical personnel? Suggested Councilor Zeth Prime. Breckval's blue skin darkened with frustration. We have tried, but many of these stations were designed with human engineering specifications. Other species are having difficulty understanding the systems. Elena hid a small smile. Human engineers had been maintaining council space stations for decades. They had gradually modified and improved the stations over time, always with proper approval and documentation. But their improvements used human engineering principles that other species found confusing. The council had been happy to let humans do technical work because it saved money and effort for more important species. Now they were discovering that human work was not as simple to replace as they had assumed. I am sure the maintenance issues will resolve themselves, Elena said when asked for comment. Humans remain committed to supporting council operations as always. It was technically true. Humans were still supporting council operations, just not as much as before. The real test came 2 weeks later during an emergency council session. A trade dispute between the Corvan Empire and the Deneb Republic had escalated to the point where both sides were threatening military action. This was exactly the kind of crisis the Council was created to prevent. We need immediate mediation, declared Councilor Thraknine. Both sides have agreed to accept neutral arbitrators. But we need technical experts to review their shipping contracts and trade agreements. In the past, human legal experts and economists would have volunteered immediately. Humans were good at understanding complex trade relationships and finding compromise solutions that made everyone happy. The Council had used human mediators for dozens of disputes over the years. But when the Council asked for volunteers, the human section remained silent. Elena stood up slowly. Earth appreciates the confidence the Council has shown in human capabilities in the past, she said carefully. However, our legal and economic experts are currently focused on internal policy reviews. We would not want to divide their attention during such an important time. Councilor Zeth Prime's crystalline face flickered with surprise. But surely some human experts could assist. This dispute could affect trade throughout the entire sector. Other species have excellent legal and economic specialists, Elena replied. Perhaps this would be a good opportunity for them to demonstrate their expertise. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Elena could feel dozens of alien eyes staring at her. Human ambassadors never refused council requests. They might ask for more time or resources, but they never said no completely. Finally, Counselor Thrak 9 spoke again. Very well. We will proceed with experts from other species. But Elena could see the confusion and concern on the faces around her. This was not how humans normally behaved. The Corvin Deneb dispute took 3 weeks to resolve instead of the usual 5 days. Without human mediators, the negotiations moved slowly and nearly collapsed twice. The final agreement satisfied nobody completely and left both sides angry at the Council's handling of the situation. More problems emerged over the following weeks. Supply chains that relied on human-operated transport ships began experiencing delays. Communications networks that used human-designed relay systems started having technical difficulties. Even the Council's own computer systems, which had been upgraded by human technicians over the years, began running more slowly. Each problem was small by itself, but together, they created a growing sense that something was not working properly in the galaxy. Elena received worried messages from Earth almost every day. Human colonies were reporting visits from Council inspection teams. Other species were asking questions about human activities and future plans. Some Council members were becoming suspicious about the timing of all these problems. But Elena's orders were clear. Continue attending meetings, follow all protocols, and give no explanations beyond what was absolutely necessary. During one particularly tense council session, Counselor Zeth Prime approached Elena directly. Ambassador, I have noticed changes in human participation lately, he said. His crystalline face showed colors that Elena had learned meant concern and confusion. Is Earth experiencing some kind of internal crisis? Elena looked directly at him with calm, steady eyes. Humanity is simply reassessing our priorities and focusing on internal development, she said. We believe this will ultimately benefit everyone. But the Council has always valued human contributions, Zeth Prime pressed. Surely any internal development could be coordinated with Council oversight. The Council has taught us the importance of self-improvement and independent growth, Elena replied. We are following that guidance. Zeth Prime's colors shifted to deep confusion. The Council did encourage self-improvement, but they expected to oversee and approve any major changes. Elena's response was perfectly polite and technically correct, but it did not answer his real question. As Zeth Prime walked away, Elena touched her wedding ring and thought about the latest reports from Earth. Human colonies were not just reducing their Council activities, they were disappearing entirely from some sectors. Ships were being recalled, personnel were being reassigned, and nobody outside of humanity knew where they were going. The Council was finally starting to notice that something was wrong. But they were asking the wrong questions. Soon, they would realize they should have been asking where humanity was going instead of wondering why they were leaving. 6 months after the quiet withdrawal began, Counselor Thrak 9 stood before the emergency assembly and delivered news that shocked every species in the chamber. 3 human colonies have gone completely silent, he announced. His forearms gestured sharply, showing how serious the Rex considered this situation. All communication attempts have failed. Long-range sensors show the colonies are still inhabited, but they are not responding to any Council transmissions. Elena sat in her usual seat and listened without changing her expression. She already knew about the silent colonies because Earth had informed her weeks ago. But hearing it announced publicly made the situation feel more real. The colonies had not just stopped talking. They had stopped existing as far as the Council was concerned. No trade reports, no status updates, no requests for assistance. They had simply vanished from Council records while continuing to function independently. This is unacceptable, declared Counselor Zeth Prime. His crystalline body flashed bright colors that Elena recognized as anger and confusion. Member species cannot simply ignore council authority. There are protocols to follow. Elena wanted to laugh at his outrage, but she kept her face neutral. Protocols to follow. That was all the council ever talked about. For 150 years, humans had followed every protocol perfectly. Now they were choosing not to, and the council did not know how to respond. The real crisis became clear during the technical briefings that followed. The galaxy's infrastructure was failing in small but important ways. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were suddenly experiencing problems that no one understood how to fix. Chief Engineer Brakton of the Corvan Empire was the first to speak about the technical difficulties. His massive frame barely fit in the speaking area as he explained the situation. 17 major space stations are operating at reduced capacity, he rumbled in his deep voice. The primary issue appears to be maintenance systems that were modified by human technicians over the past decades. Without those technicians present, we cannot fully understand how these modifications work. Elena knew exactly what Brakton was talking about. Human engineers have been improving council systems for years, always with permission and proper documentation. But their improvements used human engineering, principles that seemed simple when explained by humans and impossibly complex. When other species tried to understand them alone, can the systems be restored to their original specifications? Asked Councilor Vraktor of the Deneb Republic. Brakton's rocky face showed embarrassment. The original specifications are no longer sufficient. The stations now handle 3 times their original capacity. Removing the human modifications would require shutting down each station for months and reducing their effectiveness significantly. The scope of the problem became clearer as other reports came in. Human-designed communication relays were experiencing failures throughout the Outer Rim. Trade routes that depended on human-operated waypoint stations were becoming unreliable. Even simple maintenance tasks were taking twice as long without human technicians to help. But the most disturbing news came from the Vrex Intelligence Division. Counselor Thrak 9 presented their findings with obvious reluctance. Our intelligence officers report unusual activity in human space, he began carefully. Ship movements that do not match any known human vessel designs. Energy signatures that suggest technological capabilities beyond current human classifications. Construction activity in systems that were previously listed as uninhabitable. Elena felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her expression calm. The Council's intelligence network was not as good as they thought, but it was still dangerous. She hoped they had not discovered too much about humanity's secret developments. Furthermore, Thrak 9 continued, we have lost contact with our monitoring stations in human space. All personnel assigned to observe human activities have either resigned their positions or requested immediate transfers to other assignments. That was Elena's doing. Over the past month, she had sent coded messages to every Council intelligence officer working in human space. The message was simple. Leave now or face consequences that humanity would prefer to avoid. Most had chosen to leave. Counselor Zeth Prime's crystalline body flashed through several color patterns before settling on deep red, a sign of serious concern among the Zeth. Ambassador Vasquez, surely Earth can explain these developments? The Council has a right to monitor member species activities for galactic security purposes. Elena stood slowly and looked around the chamber. Every alien eye was focused on her, waiting for answers that she had no intention of providing. Earth appreciates the Council's concern for galactic security, she said in the same polite tone she had used for 12 years. However, humanity has decided to pursue independent development in accordance with our sovereign rights as a member species. Independent development must still comply with Council oversight. Zeth Prime responded quickly. No member species is permitted to develop technologies or capabilities that could threaten galactic harmony. Humanity has no intention of threatening galactic harmony, Elena replied truthfully. We simply wish to explore our potential without external limitations. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several counselors spoke at once, their voices mixing into a confusion of concern and anger. Elena could hear fragments of different conversations, complaints about human ingratitude, demands for immediate explanations, threats of sanctions, and enforcement actions. Finally, Councilor Thrak 9 called for order. The Council will attempt direct communication with Earth leadership, he announced. This situation requires immediate clarification. Elena knew that direct communications had already been attempted. The Council had sent formal requests to Earth's government 3 weeks ago. The responses had been polite but unhelpful. Humanity appreciates past cooperation with the Council, but has chosen to pursue an independent path. We wish the Council well in their future endeavors. Every attempt to get more detailed explanations had been met with the same response. Earth was not being rude or hostile. They were simply not engaging with Council authority anymore. The emergency session continued for 8 hours, but no real solutions emerged. The Council could not force the silent human colonies to respond. They could not replace the missing human technical expertise quickly. They could not explain the strange activity in human space or the failure of their monitoring systems. As the session finally ended, Elena gathered her things and prepared to leave. She noticed that other ambassadors were looking at her differently now, not with the casual dismissal she had grown used to, but with something that looked like concern and maybe even fear. Councillor Breckville approached her as she walked toward the exit. The small Zelix looked nervous, her blue skin darker than usual. Ambassador, my species has always valued our friendship with humanity, she said quietly. If there are problems, the Council could help address. Elena looked down at the shorter alien and felt something that might have been sympathy. Breckville had always been more respectful than most Council members. She had never treated humans as inferior. There are no problems that require Council assistance, Elena said gently. Humanity is simply growing in new directions. But the technical failures, the communication problems, surely we can work together to find solutions? Elena touched Breckville's shoulder briefly, a gesture that surprised both of them. Some growth requires independence, she said. The Council taught us that strong species must be self-reliant. We are following that lesson. Breckville's expression showed understanding and worry at the same time. She was beginning to realize that humanity's withdrawal was not temporary or negotiable. As Elena left the chamber, she thought about the reports waiting for her in her private office. Reports about human colonies that had moved beyond Council sensor range. Reports about new technologies that would have been impossible under Council restrictions. Reports about plans that went far beyond anything the Council could imagine. The Council was starting to understand that they had a problem. But they still did not understand how big that problem really was. Soon, they would learn the difference between a species that followed orders and a species that had been quietly preparing for independence for 50 years. Very soon. The crisis began at 3:47 a.m. Galactic Standard Time, when the main communication hub for the outer rim sectors went completely dark. Elena was sleeping in her diplomatic quarters when the emergency alert woke her. She checked her secure communication device and saw the coded message from Earth. Phase 4 initiated. Maintain position until further notice. Phase 4 meant that humanity was removing all remaining technical support from critical Council systems. Elena got dressed quickly and prepared for what she knew would be the worst day in the Council's history. By the time she reached the emergency assembly 6 hours later, the scope of the disaster was becoming clear. The outer rim communication hub was not just offline, it was completely dead. Backup systems had failed. Redundant connections had stopped working. Emergency protocols had activated and then failed too. 18 star systems are now completely isolated from the Galactic communication network, reported Chief Technical Coordinator Vex Prime. The tall, thin alien's usually calm voice showed signs of panic. We cannot re-establish contact with any of them. Elena listened to the reports and realized how carefully humanity had planned this moment. The communication hub had been designed 50 years ago by the Zeth, but human technicians had maintained and upgraded it for decades. Every improvement had been properly approved and documented, but the documentation did not explain how all the improvements worked, together without human experts to explain the systems. Other species were discovering that they could not fix problems they did not fully understand. The technical failures spread throughout the day. Power grids on 3 major worlds began experiencing fluctuations that their engineers could not correct. Trade computers that calculated shipping routes and managed cargo manifests started producing errors that made no sense. Even basic life support systems on space stations began requiring manual intervention every few hours. How much of our infrastructure depends on human technical support? Counselor Thrak 9 asked during the emergency session. The answer, when it finally came, shocked everyone in the chamber. Human engineers had been involved in designing, building, or maintaining approximately 60% of the galaxy's critical systems. They had worked on everything from starship engines to planetary, weather control networks. But the humans had not just been doing maintenance work. Intelligence reports that came in throughout the day revealed that they had been making improvements and modifications for decades. Small changes that seemed innocent when approved individually had combined into complex systems that only humans fully understood. They have been preparing for this for years, Counselor Zeth Prime announced. His crystalline body flashed patterns of anger and fear. Every modification, every improvement, every seemingly helpful suggestion was designed to make us dependent on them. Elena almost smiled at his outrage. The council had been happy to let humans do technical work because it saved money and effort for more important species. They had approved every modification because human improvements always worked better than the original systems. Now they were angry that humans had been too helpful. But the worst news came from the Intelligence Division. Counselor Thrak 9 presented findings that changed everything. The Council thought they knew about humanity. Long-range sensors have detected massive construction. Activity in human space, he reported grimly. Structures that appear to be shipyards, but using technologies we cannot identify. Energy signatures that suggest industrial capacity far beyond anything humans should possess. The reports continued with more disturbing details. Human colonies that had been listed as small mining outposts were now showing signs of major population centers. Systems that humans had claimed were uninhabitable were clearly supporting large-scale operations. Ships with designs that matched no known human technology were moving throughout human space. How long have they been hiding these capabilities from us? Demanded Counselor VRAK-Tor. Elena knew the answer, but she said nothing. Humanity had been secretly developing advanced technologies for over a century, always being careful to hide their progress from Council oversight. The resources that the Council thought humans were using for approved projects had actually been supporting massive hidden research and development programs. The Council's response was swift and predictable. Counselor Thrak 9 stood before the assembly and made the announcement that Elena had been expecting for months. The Vrex Federation will deploy a fleet to human space to restore Council authority, he declared. This situation has gone beyond technical difficulties. Humanity is clearly in violation of multiple Council agreements. They must be brought back into compliance immediately. Elena felt her heart racing, but she kept her expression calm. Earth hopes that any council actions will be guided by the principles of galactic harmony, she said when asked for comment. It was a polite way of saying that humanity would defend itself if attacked. But Elena doubted that the council understood her meaning. The Vrex fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 36 escort vessels, enough firepower to destroy most planetary defense systems. They departed for human space 3 days later with orders to secure major human colonies and restore council communication links. Elena received daily reports about the fleet's progress through her secure channels. The Vrex ships moved confidently toward the nearest human system, expecting to find small colonies defended by the limited military forces that council regulations permitted. What they found instead was nothing. The first system the fleet reached was completely empty. Orbital stations that had existed for decades were gone. Mining operations that had been active for years had vanished. Even the asteroid habitats that humans had built were nowhere to be found. The fleet found evidence that massive structures had recently been dismantled and removed. Sensor readings showed that enormous amounts of material had been moved out of the system in the past few months. But there was no indication of where everything had gone. System after system told the same story. Human colonies that had existed for generations had simply disappeared. Industrial facilities that should have taken years to dismantle were gone without a trace. Millions of humans had vanished along with all their infrastructure. The only things the Vrex found were automated message beacons left behind at each empty system. The messages were identical and brief. This system has been voluntarily evacuated by its inhabitants. No council intervention is required. Please respect former territorial boundaries. Admiral Rattled, commander of the Vrex fleet, sent increasingly frustrated reports back to the council. We cannot restore authority over systems that no longer contain anything to govern, he complained. The humans appeared to have evacuated their entire civilization. Elena watched the council's growing panic as reports continued to arrive. 50 human systems had been found empty. Sensor sweeps showed no signs of human activity anywhere in previously occupied space. Even Earth's solar system appeared to be running on automated systems with no organic life detected. Where did they go? Councilor Zeph Prime demanded during one heated emergency session. Billions of humans cannot simply disappear. This is impossible. Elena knew where they had gone, but the truth would have been even more frightening than the mystery. Humanity had not just evacuated their old territories. They had moved to new worlds that the Council did not even know existed. Hidden colonies in unexplored systems. Mobile habitats that could relocate faster than Council sensors could track them. Technologies that made entire civilizations effectively invisible. The final blow came when Admiral Rattled attempted to approach Earth itself. His flagship, the most advanced vessel in the Vrex fleet, encountered something that should not have been possible. Unknown vessels have appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, he reported. They are not matching any known human ship designs. Their energy signatures suggest technological capabilities that... His voice trailed off before continuing. Request immediate Council guidance. These vessels appear to be significantly more advanced than our own. Elena touched her wedding ring and felt a moment of fierce pride. The Council was finally meeting humanity's true military capabilities. Ships that had been built in secret using technologies that the Council had forbidden humans to research. Weapons that incorporated discoveries that humanity had made during their century of hidden development. The Council had always assumed that humans were grateful for the advanced technologies they had been given. They never realized that humans were excellent students who had learned everything the Council could teach and then discovered new things on their own. As the emergency session continued late into the night, Elena listened to the growing desperation in the Council chambers. Systems were failing throughout the galaxy. Human colonies had vanished completely. Unknown ships were demonstrating capabilities that made Council technology look primitive. The species that had treated humanity as junior members for 150 years were finally beginning to understand that they had been the junior partners all along. But Elena knew that the real surprise was still to come. Humanity was done hiding, and the galaxy was about to learn what humans could accomplish when they stopped asking for permission. 1 year after the last human had been seen in Council space, the galaxy learned that some disappearances were actually arrivals. Elena was in her diplomatic quarters when the alert came through. Every Council world, every major space station, every military outpost had simultaneously detected the same thing. Unknown ships appearing at the edge of their sensor range. The ships were not attacking or threatening anyone. They simply appeared, transmitted identification signals, and waited. But their very presence sent shock waves throughout the galaxy, because everyone recognized what they represented. Humanity had returned. But these were not the same humble vessels the Council remembered. Elena received her final orders from Earth through a communication channel that the Council could not detect or intercept. Phase 5 initiated. Deliver final statement and prepare for immediate departure. She gathered the few personal items she wanted to keep and prepared for what she knew would be her last day as humanity's ambassador to the Galactic Harmony Council. The emergency assembly convened within hours. Every species sent their most senior representatives. The chamber that usually echoed with long debates about minor trade disputes was now filled with tense whispers and worried conversations. Counselor Thrak9 called the session to order, but his usually confident voice showed signs of strain. The Council has confirmed the presence of unknown vessels in 47 star systems, he announced. The ships claim to be human, but their technological capabilities far exceed any known human specifications. Elena stood slowly and looked around the chamber one final time. She had spent 12 years in this room, listening to other species discuss humanity like they were children who needed constant supervision. Now those same species were staring at her with expressions she had never seen before: respect, fear, and uncertainty. The vessels are indeed human, she said simply. Humanity is prepared to discuss the new relationship between our civilization and the galactic community. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Councilor Zeth Prime's crystalline body flashed bright red as he spoke over the noise. New relationship? Humanity cannot simply ignore a century of agreements and treaties. The Council has authority over all member species. Elena looked directly at him and spoke with calm certainty. The Council has authority over species that choose to accept that authority. Humanity is making a different choice. Before anyone could respond, the main communication system activated automatically. Every screen in the chamber showed the same image: a human woman sitting in what appeared to be the command center of a starship unlike anything the Council had ever seen. "Greetings, Galactic Harmony Council," the woman said. Elena recognized her immediately. Admiral Sarah Chun, the former mining engineer who had become one of humanity's most brilliant military leaders. "I am Admiral Chun of the Human Independent Fleet. I bring a message from the governments of free humanity." The technology displaying the message was clearly beyond anything the Council possessed. The image quality was perfect, despite being transmitted across interstellar distances in real time. The signal had somehow bypassed all Council security systems and accessed their most protected communication networks without effort. For 150 years, humanity served the Council faithfully, Admiral Chum continued. We followed every rule, accepted every limitation, and worked to support galactic harmony as we understood it. During this time, we learned much about technology, politics, and the true nature of the relationships between galactic civilizations. Elena watched the faces around her as the Admiral spoke. Some showed anger, others fear, but most showed growing realization that they had fundamentally misunderstood what humanity was capable of. We also learned that the Council's definition of harmony required humanity to remain weak, dependent, and grateful for scraps of technology and respect. We were expected to provide labor and resources, while accepting that our ideas, our innovations, and our potential would never be valued as equal to other species. Council of Raktor tried to interrupt. This is not true. Humanity was always treated as a valued member of the galactic community. Admiral Chun paused and looked directly at the camera. Valued members are not forbidden from researching certain technologies. Valued members are not restricted to 50 star systems when other species control thousands. Valued members are not described as adequate when they exceed the performance of their supervisors. Elena felt a surge of satisfaction as she watched council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Every insult, every condescending comment, every casual dismissal had been recorded and remembered. Therefore, Admiral Chun continued, humanity has chosen independence. We no longer recognize council authority over human affairs. We no longer participate in council economic or political systems. We no longer provide the technical support and labor that made the Council's version of galactic harmony possible. The Admiral gestured to someone off-screen, and the display changed to show technical specifications that made every engineer in the chamber gasp. Ships that could travel faster than anything the Council had ever built. Energy weapons that surpassed anything in the Council's military arsenal. Manufacturing capabilities that dwarfed the combined industrial output of all Council species. These technologies were developed by human researchers working independently of Council oversight, Admiral Chun explained. We discovered that we could advance much faster when we stopped asking permission for every experiment and innovation. Elena knew that the displayed technologies were only a small sample of what humanity had achieved during their secret century of development. The ships currently waiting at the edges of Council space represented the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, and they were just the vessels that humanity chose to reveal. We do not seek conflict with the Council, the Admiral continued. The galaxy is vast enough for both our civilizations to prosper. But understand that humanity will no longer ask permission to exist in it. We will explore new worlds, develop new technologies, and build new relationships with species that choose to interact with us as equals. Counselor Zeth Prime found his voice again. This is unacceptable. The Council maintains responsibility for galactic stability. Independent human actions could destabilize the careful balance we have maintained for centuries. Admiral Chun smiled, not the polite, diplomatic smile that Elena had perfected over 12 years, but the confident smile of someone who held all the advantages in a negotiation. The balance you maintained required humanity to remain weak and dependent, she said. That balance no longer exists. Humanity suggests that the Council adapt to new realities rather than attempting to enforce old agreements that no longer serve anyone's interests. The communication ended as suddenly as it had begun, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. Elena stood and gathered her things for the final time. As she prepared to leave, Councillor Breckval approached her. The small Zelix looked tired and worried. Ambassador, surely there is some way to resolve this situation? The Council needs time to adjust to these new circumstances. Elena looked down at the alien who had always treated her with more respect than most. The Council has had 150 years to treat humanity as equals, she said gently. Humanity has decided not to wait any longer. As Elena walked toward the exit, she heard the chaos erupting behind her. Some Council members were calling for immediate military action against human ships. Others were demanding negotiations. A few were already calculating how much their civilizations, depended on systems that humans had built and maintained. But Elena no longer cared about their debates. Her job here was finished. Outside the council building, a human shuttle waited for her. As it lifted off and headed for the nearest human ship, Elena looked down at the alien city that had been her home for 12 years. She felt no nostalgia for the place where her species had been treated as junior partners for so long. Through the shuttle window, she could see other ships throughout the star system. Some were council vessels, watching nervously as human ships demonstrated capabilities that made the galaxy's most advanced technology look primitive. Others were already civilian transports from species that wanted to establish new trade relationships with independent humanity. The pilot, a young human officer, looked back at her with curiosity. "Ambassador, what do you think will happen to the council now?" Elena smiled as she watched the council world grow smaller behind them. "They will adapt or decline," she said simply. "Just like any other civilization that refuses to change with the times." As their shuttle docked with a human starship, unlike anything the council had ever imagined, Elena thought about the future. Humanity was free to explore the galaxy without restrictions. They could develop technologies without asking permission. They could build relationships with other species based on mutual respect rather than enforced hierarchy. The Council had taught humanity many things during their years of forced cooperation. But the most important lesson was that some species would never willingly share power with those they considered inferior. Humanity had learned that lesson well. They had also learned how to make sharing power irrelevant. The galaxy was about to discover what humans could accomplish when they stopped pred.